Well, each year, football fans and players celebrate Christmas on December 25th. But if you're a college football coach, you have to wait until February before you can unwrap your gifts. It happens on a Wednesday in February, which we have now reached, National Letter of Intent Signing Day, and it's being celebrated here today at Grand Valley as Coach Matt Mitchell welcomes a crew of about 2 dozen. Jim Walsh, years here at Grand Valley, in the last 15 years or so, and we've had players come into Allendale from all over the country, players from Florida, out west, all different places. Mark Rosenquist from Sweden, if you can believe that. But this class coming in this year, Steve, has a decidedly Midwest look to it. The players largely from the state of Michigan and certainly from the states around here.
Yeah, that's right. 24 total, as you say, and 14 of those from the state of Michigan, but 10 from 3 different states in the Midwest. So you can see how that Laker brand, that footprint regionally is so strong. Alan True of Scout.com, I talked with him. We'll hear about that later on in the show. But, yeah, definitely the brand within the Midwest, very, very strong.
Well, Matt Mitchell has to do a balancing act here with his recruiting. He has to replace certain players that he knows have created a hole by their departure. And yet you're also looking at how can you find the best athletes, because very often at this level of football, a good athlete will be utilized in a different position than the one that he played in high school, and that probably will be true about this class as well.
Oh, yeah. You know, what they're looking for, the coaches will tell you, football players. You know, somebody who has the talent, but versatility to plug into a different spot, maybe something they've never played before. And you're right. There are definitely some of those guys within this class who have that ability. When called upon by a coach, they can make that switch, and they have it to be able to play well.
There are certainly high expectations for Grand Valley football players coming into this program, because Grand Valley has had 9 different appearances in the national semifinals in playoffs since 2001. In fact, every recruiting class since 1997 has had a chance to make an appearance in a national semifinal, and those kind of expectations will continue this year. And Matt Mitchell, talking to him as we will in a couple of moments, has already said that he feels he's got the guys that can get Grand Valley back to where they want to be.
Well, to me, I look at it, and I'm sure the coaches and players that come to Grand Valley, it's a good pressure, Tom. It's instead of shrinking from it, it's an opportunity to rise above and really accomplish something. So you're right, the track record is there. And these guys, I think, embrace the moment of coming here to Grand Valley to see what kind of things they can do.
Well, Matt Mitchell is here with us today. We're going to talk to him and some of his other coaches, and we're going to find out directly from them about these new players that are coming to Allendale to become Lakers, hopefully, for life. We'll get to the coach and also to some of the people on his staff, and we'll get back with that right after this.
You learn something every single day at Grand Valley State University about who you are and who you can become, about where you've been and where you're going, about your goals and how to accomplish them. At the end of the day, you know what you want from life. Find it within yourself. Find it within Grand Valley State University.
Well, the new recruits will be in there sooner than they know it as we return for more of our National Letter of Intent Day special on Xfinity and the Grand Valley Sports Network. Tom Cleary along with Steve Lloyd-Jones and Matt Mitchell, the guy who is involved in a part of the job that never seems to end. If you're a task-oriented guy, recruiting must drive you crazy, Matt, because there is no stoppage. It just goes and goes and goes. And let's talk a little bit and get your overview about what you tried to do this year.
Yeah, obviously heading into this process, we knew it was going to be a little bit of a smaller group. The main reason being, we didn't have a lot of seniors, and this is still a money chase a little bit. We only had so much salary cap in terms of scholarship space. We have a lot of returning players on this team coming back 2016. So really wanted to focus a lot on offensive, defensive linemen. Felt like we needed to address some concerns and some needs up front, offensively and defensively line-wise, and did that. And then not sure I was heading into the process thinking we're going to take this many wide receivers, but there's too good of guys that were popping up in terms of the tape and who they were as people and students that couldn't walk away from them. So it's a balanced class, I think, and obviously a little bit more centered around the line of scrimmage.
Matt, tell us about, as we've heard you say, you're looking for guys who have that fit for Grand Valley. What does that mean, and explain that more for us?
Well, it's kind of three areas that we take a look at and try to check boxes on. One is talent. Obviously, we have high expectations here, and we have to have guys that can get it done on the field. And a lot of programs will stop there, but we can't. We have other areas that they have to meet and boxes we have to check. Grand Valley is a very competitive institution academically. You look at even my 12 years here, the profile of students has increased, and it's a challenging academic environment, which is a good thing. But we have to make sure that we recruit guys that understand that and also have the ability to rise to that challenge that they're going to meet when they're on campus in classes. And then character counts. Character counts. If you're going to have a winning team and a winning program, you need kids that have intrinsically motivated, great work ethics, have some edge to them. We're a little bit more selfless than selfish, and we try to get to know them as people too. And so it's important for us to not just focus on the tape, but we have to dig deeper and try to identify who they are as a student, who they are as a person, and really try to come up with a complete profile before we offer them a scholarship.
Well, Matt, you talked about finding the right kind of player at Grand Valley, generally somebody who knows what's happened here and what goes on here. And as we talk about our list of recruits for 2016, the first name at the top of the list is a little bit of a legacy recruit. Tyler Bradfield has a sister who's an outstanding athlete here in the soccer program, obviously a West Michigan kid who knows about it. So why don't we take a look at this young guy and our first group of recruits here today.
Yeah, so many connections with Tyler. I mean, first of all, as you mentioned, his sister Erica plays soccer here and is on the team. And then the Rockford community in general. We've had a lot of former great Lakers. The Hosford family obviously comes to mind. Currently, Kyle Short's on our team from Rockford, Zach Breen. There's been a lot of great Grand Valley people from the city of Rockford. So we had a connection there. I've known Ralph Munger a long time since I first showed up here at Grand Valley in 2004, and a lot of the coaches over there too are supporters. So it was contested. It wasn't a slam dunk by any means of the imagination. We obviously had to recruit extremely hard, but at the end of the day, we're excited. I think we talk about West Michigan. Tyler is one of the most versatile players in this area. Defensively, all over the field. Offensively, played running back and quarterback, returned punts, returned kicks. There wasn't anything he didn't do for the Rockford Rams this year, and you combine that with a great student and a really good fit for our university. We were extremely excited to get him committed in December.
Well, it's been good, recently with guys from Rockford and what they've produced, Zach Breen, Kyle Short. So you're right, looking forward to what he can do. In this class, Mitch, when we look back over the last couple of years, you've been getting more skilled players in the past, more quarterbacks, running backs. The next guy we want to take a look at here, maybe the one quarterback you take, and I say maybe because, again, we don't know necessarily what position these guys will be, but Frank D'Ascenzo. Talk about him a little bit as we look at his film and break that down for us.
Yeah, for us with the remaining years eligibility, we have current quarterbacks and a couple guys who signed last year. I wasn't just going to take a quarterback to take a quarterback. He had to be a guy that I thought was going to contribute and play. And so we also at the same time knew we probably weren't going to take more than one. But Frank's been a guy who was on our radar back. His junior year, we saw his tape. He came to a couple other camps, came to our camp. We were extremely impressed with him and his family at our camp, and we stayed with the recruiting process with him. And again, there was some competition from some other schools in our league, but he's very unique. I think he has the ability to throw it at the level that we expect at Grand Valley State, but he's also a really good athlete. I think one of the first highlights on his huddle highlight is him returning a punt for a touchdown. Coach Postma went over and saw him play live. That helped a lot, just seeing how he interacted with his teammates, the competitive nature of who he was and who he was as a person. So, again, knew I was probably only going to take one quarterback, had to be the right one. And we weren't just going to take a guy. And so I think we found that with Frank, an in-state quarterback. That's going to have to come in here. And the depth chart is deep at that position. As everybody knows, we have Bart Williams, and we got a couple guys who signed last year. So it'll be competition. He understands that, and I don't think he's shied away from that at any point in time.
Another guy coming up on our list is Ethan Culbertson, a guy who's from an area of Michigan that has been so rich with football talent in recent years, and it's been a great area for Grand Valley. Young man from Utica down there in Shelby Township, Macomb County, and talk about just not only his abilities, but about the other players that you've been able to pluck out of there in recent years.
Well, still, there's obviously some good football in West Michigan, but if you look at the center of the state that has the most prospects signed, regardless of level, it's going to be the east side of the state around Detroit. And specifically, the north suburbs have been very good. Look at the Catholic League and a lot of the other schools around there, like Stevenson up in the north suburbs. So it's an area that when I was an assistant for Chuck Martin, I recruited that area. So I'm very familiar with that area, the competition of football and how many kids assigned from there. So, Ethan was again, we needed some offensive linemen in this class, and he was a guy that we saw early on tape, had the athletic ability to do it. It's sometimes people think in terms of offensive line, big is better. That's not always the case. You see some kids that are extremely large but slow-footed, don't have the athletic twitch to get it done. Ethan has that. He's probably arguably the most athletic overall individual that we recruited in terms of the offensive line position. And played a lot of different spots, did a lot of different things. And so, he's got a great family, great support system at home. I think as a guy that I don't know if he'll play right away in 2016, but man, he has a huge upside and a lot of potential to grow because he has some things you just can't coach or teach in terms of overall athleticism. And, you got to have kids up front to win at the line of scrimmage, they get the job done. And we prefer to get kids from the Midwest and specifically in Michigan. And so he kind of fit all those things that we needed on the offensive line.
Matt, by way of wide receivers, that's a position that I don't know that you initially went into it saying we're going to grab 4 or 5 of these guys, but the talent was there. And one of the guys maybe at the top of that list to play that spot, Zach Smith out of Toledo. You got him, as we go to a video of him, great athlete, just a tremendous ball skills. Talk about him and also just what you were finding as you were recruiting wide receivers and all this talent for you.
Yeah, we really only lose from last year's squad. We lost 2 receivers, Justice Wright, and obviously, Jamie Potts we lost last year. We got a lot of guys coming back. Our leading receiver, Matt Williams, is back, and Brandon Bean, prior to the injury, had a big year. Nick Dotson played as a true freshman. Erston Smith, huge catch against Ferris in the playoff game for a touchdown. So we had some guys coming back, but we have a great group of assistant coaches that are hungry to find talent, and they're scouring the Midwest, and it just so happened that we found a group of guys that we think were extremely talented. I had to find a way financially to get it done because I couldn't let these guys slide and go. So Jack Ginn developed a great relationship with Zach, and his coach is stepping down from Whitmer. So there was some things that we had to work through there at the high school and everything, but great kid, unbelievable kid. I was back over there in Toledo 2 times the last 2 weeks. Keep developing that relationship with Zach. And you see on this highlight tape, he's physical, and not that you want all of your highlights from a wide receiver to be blocking. Okay, you like to see him do some other stuff, but there are a lot of physical things. I would say that he's hungry. He has some edge to him. He's not complacent. He wants to be great, and I've gotten the sense of that being around him. So Whitmer's an extremely strong program in the Toledo area, and for us to go down to Ohio and get a guy from the back door of a lot of their GLIAC programs, I think says something about the recruiting methods for us and the timeline, the relationship, and then also the draw of Grand Valley State that we have and the name recognition that we kind of have down that area. It doesn't hurt that our AD played basketball at Toledo, is originally from Toledo, was assistant AD there, so there's a little bit of name recognition that helps us in that area also.
Mitch, when you've been here, you've worked mostly on the defensive side of the ball. You were the defensive coordinator before you became the head coach, and you worked with Chuck Martin a lot, who used to tell me frequently that the hardest position in Division II to recruit for was defensive line. There was a dearth of guys who could really anchor a defensive line. You've got a good one here coming up next, Dennis Johnson, nearly a 300-pounder from Black Lake, Ohio. He's got his own unique story.
Yeah, very unique. I completely agree. The hardest positions to fire are interior defensive linemen. It's very difficult to find guys that have the size, the strength, the athleticism to be able to be dominant in there. So we searched far and wide for those guys. And basically the backstory on this is, I was on my Twitter account one night, was at a hotel or at home or something, and saw this kid follow me on Twitter. And anytime somebody does that, I usually click on his highlights and see if he's any good. So I clicked on his highlights, and I'm like watching on my phone. I'm like, this kid's pretty good for being as big as he is. And so I followed him back, and we DM'd, and he had some schools that were recruiting him, but he had also heard about Grand Valley State. And this is a school that's east of Columbus, and that's something that we actually go that far east, really, and actively recruit. But found out about him on tape and kept pursuing it and started developing that relationship, got him up on a visit. His family was awesome, great people. And, talking about a kid, it's only played 2 years of high school football, and, it's almost 6'2", 295 pounds, and tape for only 2 years of football is remarkable. So kind of one of those, maybe hidden gems that we found out about. Your traditional methods, you think you're going to these high schools, do all that stuff, and then, we get a guy here we're pretty excited about just based on social media. So you take him any way you could get him. You never assume anything, and that was definitely the case with Dennis.
Well, Grand Valley's had great teams in the past with Keontae Marshall and Michael McFadden, guys like that. It started really defensively with an anchor in the middle.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, you look at last year's squad, our success. You talked about Matt Judon, who's going to get drafted. We got DJ Hogan, very productive in there. Mark Rosenquist in the lead, you were talking about him. Alton Voss. We've got some really strong defensive linemen. We've been good around here on defense. It's really started Tom up front, and that's a big part of it.
Well, from the defensive line to the offensive line, which everybody wants to be strong in the trenches, and you're going after that again in this year's class. Next guy is Matt French, 300-pounder, 315 as he comes in here. You're always looking for those good offensive linemen.
Yeah, I think with offensive linemen, you start getting into, you got to be careful not becoming too athletic. You're looking for size and athleticism, and forget about that this physical game. You need some guys, some bite, that want to strike you and want to get after you. And I think that's the thing about Matt. Maybe not a prototypical height, 6'2" guy, but man, his tape, he gets after it on tape. He's a person that likes contact. He likes to hit people. And, he has some pride in rolling some guys up and getting the job done at the line of scrimmage. So, again, there was a connection with Jack Ginn, our assistant coach, with a coach that was in the building. We just started to develop that relationship with Matt. And from a smaller school, again, east of Columbus, it's a little bit further out than maybe we typically reach. But tape impressed us, person impressed us, a lot of great recommendations. I went down this high school last week. I was in a conference room with, him, his AD, his coach, an assistant coach. There's a lot of people in that room, and you could just tell being around all those people that they were, they love Matt. And that's important, too, to have the recommendations of the people that have coached him and have been around him for that. So I think we got an interior guard, like a guard or center type prospect that's a very physical player, a very strong physical player, and really has a lot of passion, for the sport and being an offensive lineman, and really embraces some of that, the stereotypes of being that guy that's down in there getting after it.
Well, Matt, we're going to talk with you a little bit later on in our show. We're going to talk to some of your assistant coaches as well. When we come back in our next segment, we're going to have Steve Lloyd-Jones talk with a guy locally who was a great recruit for Grand Valley, who's already starting to pay dividends for the Lakers. We'll get to that when we return with more on our National Letter of Intent Day special here on Xfinity and the Grand Valley Sports Network.
At Metro Health, we don't see patients, we see people. And when it comes to their health care, there's one thing we're all working toward: helping them feel better. Better summers, better dances, better retirements, and better roads ahead. This is what we want for every person we see every day. Better. Metro Health. Better all around.
And there you see the building where we're located right now, the football offices here at Lubbers Stadium at Grand Valley State University in Allendale, Michigan. I'm Tom Cleary along with Steve Lloyd-Jones with you today for our National Letter of Intent recruiting special today on Xfinity and the Grand Valley Sports Network. There was probably a time when Grand Valley depended on West Michigan to get a lot of its football talent back in the days when the program was just getting started in the 1970s. But now Grand Valley has branched out and has brought people in from all corners of the United States. And yet, you heard Matt Mitchell talk a couple of moments ago, it's still exciting and it's still very productive for Grand Valley when it can get players from this local area in West Michigan. And one guy who has really filled the bill in that regard is standing by right now is Colin Schlosser with our own Steve Lloyd-Jones. Steve?
Well, Colin, you're coming off a great year last year. Describe for us that journey for you, where you start the year not among the starters, not among the leaders in tackles, but by the end of the season, that's where you were, one of the best defensive players for Grand Valley. Describe the process and how that went.
It was just kind of one of those things where, we had somebody get hurt. I was able to step in, and, when I got a chance, I made the most of it and was able to keep playing more and more. As far as tackles, that's, something for myself, but I can't take credit for that. I mean, it's 11 guys on the field, and, a lot of those are plays made by defensive backs or plays made by the defensive line up there, covering up blockers and giving me an opportunity to go in and make a tackle. I can't really take credit for that.
Well, you played very, very well, and now the expectations for you have risen, certainly. Describe for us how this offseason and going into next year is going to be different from last year, because now you're one of the team leaders defensively. Does that feel like a lot of pressure for you, or how does it hit you?
Not really. I mean, we've got such a family atmosphere. I mean, the only thing that I think of is last year's offseason, we were coming off a 6-5 season. We had something to work for, something to prove. Whereas, this year we had a better season, but you can't take that and go into the off season and say, oh, we had a great season last year, so we're gonna have a good season again this year. You got to go in with a working attitude and realize that the games aren't won in the fall; they're won in January and February and March and spring ball, and all the stuff that you put in behind the scenes. And just got to make sure that everybody has that working mentality and get spread amongst the team, and that we continue to get better day by day.
Well, more on that, if you could. What happens in the off season for you? As you mentioned, it's going to be that hard work in February and March and all of that. What are you specifically going to be doing?
Well, lifting, obviously. We lift 3 days a week, and then this week we started winter conditioning. So we'll be in the indoor 6 to 8 in the morning. Just basically coaches making us mentally and physically tougher, running, conditioning, just essentially all around making us better athletes and developing us in strength and in the weight room.
Defensively for Grand Valley, of course, you bring back so many guys. You're one of the big ones. What does that do for you guys cohesively? I'm assuming it makes it a whole lot easier here, picking up from where you left off.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've got guys that have been put in situations before where they've had to perform in a game where things get heated, and it's guys that are going to have that experience that are going to be going in, and then also just like you said, we're going to be more cohesive because it's guys that have played together. We're used to playing together. We know where we're going to be. We know how we communicate and how we react in certain situations.
The motivation of this year was to get back to the playoffs, make a nice run, which you guys did. I'm curious for the upcoming season. What's the rallying cry? What's going to get you guys focused and motivated?
I mean, I'm not really one to look too far forward. We're just kind of taking it day by day, workout by workout. Just right now, just the thing is just to get better every single day.
Well, Colin, great job, and we wish you the best here in the upcoming season.
Thank you.
All right. Colin Schlosser with us here on National Signing Day coverage, and we'll continue with more here on Xfinity and the Grand Valley Sports Network.
What if a home phone could also be a smartphone? And what if that home phone could save you money on your home and wireless bill at the same time? With Xfinity Voice, you get amazing technology like readable voicemail on your smartphone, caller ID on your TV, and even text messaging, all for a low price. Start saving with unlimited nationwide talk and text and switch to Xfinity Voice for just $19.99 a month for 12 months. Call 1-800-XFINITY today.
I'm almost done.
Now you can pay your bill, manage your appointments, and check your connection status. Anytime, anywhere.
Oh, so you're protesting? Okay.
Introducing Xfinity My Account, available on any device.
What if a home phone could also be a smartphone? And what if that home phone could save you money on your home and wireless bill at the same time? With Xfinity Voice, you get amazing technology like readable voicemail on your smartphone, caller ID on your TV, and even text messaging, all for a low price. Start saving with unlimited nationwide talk and text and switch to Xfinity Voice for just $19.99 a month for 12 months. Call 1-800-XFINITY today.
I'm almost done.
Now you can pay your bill, manage your appointments, and check your connection status. Anytime, anywhere.
Oh, so you're protesting? Okay.
Introducing Xfinity My Account, available on any device.
And to look back at the facility here at Grand Valley State University, the scoreboard outside Lover Stadium, there you see, well, a couple of guys, Jacob McGuckin and Brad Ichek, big members of the team in the last decade that had so much success. And we're joined right now by Jim Lewis, the assistant coach here at Grand Valley, whose coverage area for recruiting is Southwest Michigan and Chicago. I guess that means you got the best four-wheel drive vehicle on the staff, Jim, because you're down there in the area where the snow comes down.
Often I'll make that decision to take the Lakeshore and go all the way over to 131 in Kalamazoo when I'm coming back from Chicago, yeah, for sure.
What kind of year was it for you in your recruiting area, and how was the talent in the places that you were at?
You know, I think like what Coach Mitchell already had alluded to, we weren't looking at bringing in a big class and necessarily a big volume. So it was more hand-picking, hand-selecting the guys that fit what we were looking for. And anytime you're going to a metro area like Chicago of 7 million people, there's a lot of schools, a lot of places that you have to go through and kind of vet through. But, a lot of talent at this point, and, we were just excited to be able to get in the mix with some guys that we did. So.
Let's meet the next 6 guys up here on our calendar. The first guy is a running back with quite a pedigree, Gabe Brooks. His father was Reggie Brooks, former Notre Dame player, and tell us a little bit about him.
Yeah, Gabe was a young man that we've been on for a long time. We really liked him on tape. We liked his versatility. He's a two-way player, running back. He can play in the alley as a strong safety. He can play a corner. He can play a deep safety. Like you said, his lineage with his dad, still associated with the University of Notre Dame and their club. And he does a great job in terms of being a diverse athlete. So we're excited to be getting him, and think he can play a lot of different positions within our defense. So,
Steve.
Well, as we talk more about your offensive line now, is Tom Seawalk is a guy.
Mm-hmm.
Jim, as we look at this, he's an offensive lineman out of Naperville, Illinois, another guy of the 10, not out of the state of Michigan. But describe for us again, I know not necessarily your specialty, but kind of the philosophy with offensive line and the guys up front.
Yeah.
Coach Mich was saying that nastiness, that bite is
Yes.
part of it, isn't it?
Yeah, and Tommy's a young man that I had the pleasure to recruit, just a great person, family, hard worker. And he was a guy that had some 1AA or FCS interest as well. And athletic, he's a long kid. He has physical reps, he can pass protect. Neuqua Valley is right near Naperville, so it's one of the bigger schools in the state of Illinois. And he's been coached very well and still has a lot of upside because we see him, putting on an extra, 30 pounds, 40 pounds Tommy's also a state qualifying thrower. I know he's still contemplating the idea of being a two-sport athlete here at Grand Valley State and getting a chance to be a thrower with the program that way too. So really excited to be getting him, and a young man that we think has a lot of potential.
So that overall athlete is
Yes.
important, even with offensive linemen.
Yes, absolutely. And like Coach had already mentioned that we're looking to try to get a great athlete, but at the O-line position, you also have to find that balance of strength, physicality, and things like that. And we feel real good about the men we're bringing in at that position.
Jim, the next guy up for us in the rotation is a guy that you will get a chance to coach, Jace Deminoff, and Grand Valley's all about winning. They like guys who have won, and in Ithaca, there are very few people anywhere that have won more football games than they have in recent history. Tell us a little bit about this guy, because I'm sure even though you didn't recruit him personally yourself, you know of him and what he can do and how he's going to factor in your universe.
Yeah, absolutely. Jace is a young man that Coach Vitztham, our quarterback's coach, recruited from Ithaca, obviously from a great program, and has a great background in terms of his leadership abilities and things like that. But really from day one, when we started our evaluation of all the linebacker film, he was just a guy that stood out for us as a guy that first and foremost can fit up the run and read the box really well. He can blitz. He can play in coverage. He also is a young man that brings a lot to the table leadership-wise and intangibles. So we really, really are excited about getting Jace into our program. I still think the last name Deminoff, that kind of breeds some fear in people. I don't know if it's the same for you guys.
Sounds like KGB almost.
Kind of that way. I call him the Russian assassin right now. So that he'll have to live up to that nickname once he gets into the program. But yeah, we're really excited to get him.
Well, the next name on the list for us here, a guy who's going to make Bart Williams smile. 6'6" wide receiver target here, Mike Robb. He's out of Midland Dow. Mm-hmm. That is definitely somebody, a mismatch waiting to happen, isn't it? A 6'6".
Absolutely, and Mike, was a late addition to us. A lot of the commitments that we had, we're rolling in throughout November and December, and he committed to us pretty late here in January. And Mike is, an interesting story that he had a number of Division I looks and Division I offers. And at the end of the day, he chose Grand Valley State as a better fit for him. As an athlete, obviously, he's 6'6". He's a big, huge target, has athletic ability and a lot of upside. He's going to be a guy that we can utilize down in the red zone for, high up throws, things like that. But he came for his workout, and for the recruiting visit, we saw him do some things in his workout that were very good. So I know Coach Ginn's really excited to be getting a chance to work with him and help him develop because he's got a great frame. I know there are some other programs looking at Mike as a tight end prospect. So he's going to bring some diversity and things that we can do on offense for sure.
Jim, the next player we're going to talk about is a young guy from just south of the border down in Indiana. Brandon Wadley comes from my favorite classification in recruiting. You'll never see it on the field, but he's an athlete.
Yes.
And that means that we don't know where yet, but we just know that he's good enough to play somewhere for us, and probably a guy who could show some versatility, might play more than one position as a college player.
Well, absolutely. You see his first clip here is as a deep safety, and Coach Ginn was going to refute any statement I made here today that he is a two-way guy that we still haven't made the decision on. But at this point, I do think we are leaning to him being an offensive player, offensive threat. But again, the versatility that he brings to the table is fairly similar to his teammate in Gabe Brooks in the things that, they can go both ways. They can play the ball. I know Brandon is a good basketball player down there. And so, but yeah, we're really excited about him and the type of person he is, his work ethic, and his upside. And, again, the guy that either side of the ball would be fortunate to coach, and for sure special teams and things like that with that position. So
it's a good problem to have, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Trying to fit him into where you want him to use it.
Absolutely.
Well, the last guy in the group is a guy on the defensive line, Wallace Hall, which, of course, you have been in charge of recruiting here, and you want those bodies up front, those guys who can get after the quarterback and stuff the run. Talk about him a little bit.
Wallace is probably one of the first commitments we had in this class. He came to visit us still in the season, and he's a guy that I know had quite a bit of Division I interest, and he has a lot of the things in terms of He can play inside, he can play outside. He's a very versatile defensive lineman. He's athletic, he's physical, he's strong. We're probably going to start Wallace out as a 5 technique or a defensive end, but know that he's going to bring some versatility to the table in terms of, you know, where he's at with his height and weight. He's going to end up being probably a 265, 280 pound athlete. So again, a guy that we feel could play, you know, anywhere at the defensive line and be productive. So we're really excited about him and what he's going to be able to do for our defense.
Jim, great work done in your area this year. We look forward to seeing some of these guys under your tutelage in the seasons to come here at Grand Valley.
Absolutely. I appreciate it.
We've gone through our first 12 players here in our recruiting special at Grand Valley. We come back, we're going to talk with Matt Mitchell, not just about players, but we're going to talk about the science and art of recruiting and some of the things that have changed through the years at the Division II football level. We'll do that when we come back with more on Xfinity and the Grand Valley Sports Network.
Dudes, you know, been a couple of A+ roommates. And I hate to do this because you guys have been cool with everything. You're cool with my band. You're cool with that English accent phase, remember that?
We're literally out to milk.
And that theater troupe.
Rain down up. Hey, could you give me a second, please?
But State Farm's helped me be really smart with my money, and I got my own pet now. Oh, no big deal, Mom, Dad. My new place doesn't allow pets. Dylan's gonna have to stay here. One love, Pops.
Start out right in life. With everything from renter's insurance to your first bank account, State Farm is there.
My fathead king! My fathead king! Oh my gosh!
Yes! That looks really good. That look good?
This is my fat head.
I'm so excited for her. I have goosebumps.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome!
Do you like it?
I love it.
At Metro Health, we don't see patients, we see people. And when it comes to their health care, there's one thing we're all working toward: helping them feel better. Better summers, better dances, better retirements, and better roads ahead. This is what we want for every person we see every day. Better. Metro Health. Better all around.
You learn something every single day at Grand Valley State University about who you are and who you can become, about where you've been and where you're going, about your goals and how to accomplish them. At the end of the day, you know what you want from life. Find it within yourself. Find it within Grand Valley State University.
Well, in the 2016 season, Grand Valley will have some big chores to replace people like Jamie Potts and Jim Walsh offensively, and that means some work to be done by Tim Morrison, the offensive coordinator here in Allendale. He's standing by right now to talk with Steve Lloyd-Jones.
Absolutely. Well, Matt, you know, as you oversee the quarterbacks here at Grand Valley, what a great season you've just had. Bart Williams, tremendous numbers. Of course, the wins coming with that. An overview of his season from your perspective and how that went.
Sure. You know, Bart did a great job for us this year, stepping in for, you know, some guys last year that had a lot of experience. And, you know, Bart really took on a leadership role for us and, you know, really made, you know, this team his and this offense his. You know, we definitely had some bumps in the road as the season went along, but, you know, Bart did a tremendous job every game, every week, every snap, you know, really improving. And, you know, the one thing Bart does a really good job of is he really wants to perfect his craft, and he wants to be the best quarterback he can be, the best leader he can be, and, you know, he's really
because a lot of it is the subtle nuances of a quarterback making reads and wide receivers making reads on the fly. It's very complex. And describe
that right now, and looking forward to what he, you know, can do for us in the future.
I think for Laker fans, it's interesting to know how that offense goes at passing attack.
Yeah, definitely. The biggest thing that, a lot of people don't understand is, you got to, the receivers and the quarterback have to be on the same page at all times. You're reading coverages, you're trying to get guys in the zones, you're trying to get guys to beat man-to-man coverage as well. And, the good thing about Bart is, he really takes it upon himself to try to learn that and, try to get him and the wideouts, to be on the same page and to really dissect coverages. And that's when it really gets fun, when you have a guy that, really wants to get after a defense and really have his teammates be successful. And those guys are really, starting to get on the same page. And it's been real fun to watch and exciting to coach, definitely.
Well, we certainly saw a lot of Bart Williams, of course. Ali as a quarterback's coach.
Yeah, the best thing for me right now is, starting to get back with our team. I'm really excited to get working with the two guys that we signed last year, Cole Katopka and Matt.
But talk about the other quarterbacks in the program, how they're developing. What's your
one guy that doesn't get mentioned a lot, in the quarterback room is Ryan West, and Ryan was a great teammate last year and did a great job for us. But right now in the quarterback room, there's 5 guys that I think everybody in this locker room has a lot of confidence in, and I think that's not real common at this level to find 5 guys in the quarterback room that have the talent that we have and have the trust of the guys in this locker room. So I'm really looking forward to getting to work with those guys and getting my hands on them this spring and this summer and all that. So it's going well, and we're going to have some bumps definitely, but it's going to be a fun ride.
Well, in this class, you didn't grab a lot of quarterbacks, just one. A real athletic guy, though, Frank D'Ascenzo. Give us your thoughts, your perspective as a coach.
Yeah, definitely. Coach Mitchell mentioned it before. We really wanted to find the right guy, and we found Frank. And he mentioned Coach Postman and myself. We went and watched Frank play, and I was really impressed with Frank. Not necessarily in between the white lines, but outside the white lines. Interaction with teammates and his leadership. That really put him over the top for us. Frank's athletic kind of reminds me of an Ali type of quarterback, where his athleticism is what's going to make him great. But I really, really liked his leadership and his personality, and I think he's going to be a great fit into the quarterback room. Coach Mitchell talks all the time about fit, and I think he's going to be a great fit for us, and especially in our group. So.
Matt, you talk about off the field, but what are some of the main characteristics that you're looking for in a high school quarterback, maybe a transfer option? What is it that you zero in on as coaches at the quarterback position?
Yeah, you got to have the trust of everybody on the field, and including the coaching staff. I think that's a big part of it. And if the people that are blocking for you and running routes for you and trying to do everything they can to be successful for you don't trust and believe in you, you're never going to be successful. So you have to find that guy that kids want to rally around and play for. And I think that's something that's really hard to see. It's not a tangible thing that you can say, he throws the ball well or he runs well. You really got to try to find that, and you got to talk to the people around them, coaches, people in the office, things like that. You got to try to find those people that aren't necessarily out on the field with them that can describe them maybe in a different light. So you really got to work for it. It's not easy. Everybody can go out and watch arm strength and athleticism, but you got to go out and work to see if a guy's a leader.
Well, you got a fun job here working with these guys, a lot of talent. Thanks so much, Matt.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
All right, let's go back now with Tom as he has head coach Matt Mitchell.
We're going to get to that in just a minute, Steve, and we're going to get to Tim Morrison eventually. We threw a little audible at you with our offensive coaches, but we will have Tim Morrison up in just a bit. And when we come back, we will talk with Matt Mitchell about recruiting, about how it's changed, about what it means, and mostly about what it means to young people and what they should look forward to as they perhaps consider Grand Valley somewhere down the road. We'll get to that and more coming up next right here on Xfinity and the Grand Valley Sports Network.
Many of our customers are repeat customers. Once they travel with Cardinal, they come back time and time again.
Our drivers are the best in the industry. We have so many positive comments about our drivers.
Cardinal Bus, 85 years of safe, reliable, worry-free transportation. Call us at 800-348-7487.
refreshment calls, Coors Light answers. Frost brewed Coors Light, the world's most refreshing beer.
At Metro Health, we don't see patients, we see people. And when it comes to their health care, there's one thing we're all working toward: helping them feel better. Better summers, better dances, better retirements, and better roads ahead. This is what we want for every person we see every day. Better. Metro Health. Better all around.
And we're joined once again by head coach Matt Mitchell here in Allendale. Tom Cleary along with Steve Lloyd-Jones. And we can talk about players all day long, and I know you'd like to do that. But I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the job that you and your staff have in procuring these new guys coming into your program. Recruiting is such an interesting thing because it's such a moving target. You've got different pieces that are always going at different times. And how has recruiting changed, first of all, Matt, during the dozen or so years that you've been here in Allendale?
Well, I think there's more competition than probably ever has been for recruits in the state of Michigan relative to when I first got here in 2004. And I also think that the Grand Valley State brand, the university, the football program, the athletic department has spread further, and we've spread a little bit wider. First got here, we pretty much almost exclusively recruited the state of Michigan, and we've really branched out. We've got boots on the ground in Ohio and Illinois and Indiana, and receive a lot of phone calls and emails from other places out of state. So it's created more travel, just more distances, more things that have had to happen. I think this year, like we have 14 in-state, which is where we want to start, but getting 10 out-of-state kids, especially the quality we did, takes a little bit more effort and time for those families getting here and us for getting out there. So it's just it's a wider net that we've kind of spread, and it's a good thing. I think we're getting good fits for our university.
I know that people are always wondering how Grand Valley has been able to come up with guys who have advanced beyond Grand Valley to the next level of professional football. And we talk most of all about guys like Brandon Carr, Dan Scuda, but there have been other guys that have done that. It's not a perfect science of predicting which 17-year-old kid is going to become a man who's just a monster football player 5 years down the road.
No doubt. I mean, Matt Judon, I was involved in the recruitment of Matt, and I think, he has a great opportunity. He's, invited to the NFL Combine and has a great opportunity to get drafted coming up here. But that was a guy that he recruited, a pretty traditional recruitment coming out of high school. So people make mistakes. I'm not saying, we've probably made some mistakes sometime, but if people at higher levels make mistakes, they miss on kids because you're right. You don't know how they're going to grow and develop. And all of our guys playing in the NFL, I was fortunate to be here for most of their recruitment and also their careers here. These aren't guys, that transferred in from some Division I school or some other place. Those are guys that we recruited. We recruited. They did a great job buying in and growing and developing, had great careers here. So it happens. That NFL dream is not dead. I'm not saying that's the number one selling point that we use in the recruiting process, but it's not dead if you come to Grand Valley based on who we've had in the past and who I think we're going to have this year, potentially in the draft, and I think moving forward too, that's always going to be an option.
Mitch, going back to Tom's original question about how recruiting has changed, how important is social media? I mean, I guess in past years when it was initially starting, people laughed at it, it's kind of cute, but now it seems to be getting a larger and larger role. What is that like for you on a daily basis?
Well, it's huge. I think probably my number one method of contact is Twitter. I've got a Twitter account. Actually, I have a couple accounts, but I have a main one that we use, and there's a lot of times that prospects probably feel more comfortable direct message you on Twitter than maybe even a text message conversation or a phone call. So Twitter's huge. It also provides us as coaches a lot of valuable information. There's a lot of kids that if you follow their timeline, you can get a pretty good feel for where you sit, in the paradigm and where they're at, where they're visiting and what's going on. And then, and ultimately when they put up that they're verbally committed on your Twitter account, you probably feel feel pretty good about the thing because you're in good shape, and they kind of advertise, even though we can't release it to the media, it's kind of out there. So I think all social media accounts, but specifically Twitter, there's not many secrets anymore. There's not many secrets on our end or the recruits' end, or kind of how things are playing out for them just based on that. And it's something we use immensely. Halfway, I'm addicted to it to a certain extent this time of year. I'm on it constantly and scrolling through it and seeing what's going on and trying to get updates on our guys and other guys here in the Midwest.
Matt, another question for you about it. With your focus on seniors and offers at that time, but as a coaching staff, how early do you zero in on a recruit?
Well, we'll start taking a look at some 2017 prospects, pretty quick. And basically how it works is the first part of this whole recruitment thing is evaluation. Before you even start recruiting them, you have to evaluate them all. And like I said, that evaluation is not just based on tape, it's based on a lot of other factors. So you just got to start somewhere. We start with the tape, see how good they are. And that funnel starts very wide. It's a very wide funnel. And as you start to take a look at who they are as a person, as their academic fits, those things, recruiting starts to take place, your funnel narrows. And I would say by the time you head into your the kid's senior year and you get senior tape, and that funnel that narrows the funnel even a little bit more, that you're able to really highlight the guys that you want to get and go after and actively recruit, and offer scholarships too, and hopefully get to verbal commitments and sign like they did today. But that's starting. We're taking a look at, and we will continue. We had coaches on the road last week that not only were checking in on our guys that were verbally committed, they're asking high school coaches about their 17 prospects and starting to generate and populate lists. And we'll be working a full year from today to try to get that 17 class whittled down and get the guys that hopefully we want.
I think when you talk about Division I football, Matt, you talk about a number of guys in a program that's very similar to the number that you would have in your program. Problem is, they've got 85 scholarships at the Division II level. You might have 36, which means that most guys are getting partials. But it's not a loss if you're a kid that doesn't get the so-called full ride. There are other means available, and I know that you and your staff have worked very hard to let people know that kids have some other tools at their disposal that can help them finance their college education that go beyond the grant they get from the football program.
Yeah, you hit a big point on the head, and I could spend an hour talking about it, but the biggest difference with the Division II is the partial scholarship model. We have nobody on our roster that's on a full football scholarship, and I don't think people appreciate that there's some sacrifices being made. So obviously for some of the kids, that is part of the way that their bill gets funded, but there's other avenues too. If you can find a kid that's it's a great student, and again, academic scholarships are extremely competitive at Grand Valley State, but if you find a great student, you can stack that on top of some of the football money. Based on the family's financial situation, they might qualify for some grants. The federal Pell Grant is a powerful tool to help people in their financial situations afford college, and then we do have some kids that, whether it's through student loans or their families helping them out, that's how it's making up the difference. But with 36, point of reference, this year's team, the 2015, we had about 90 guys on 36 scholarships, and another, 20 guys that are a big part of this program that are not on any aid. So I think we have even a more difficult job than a guy like maybe Mark D'Antonio or Jim Harbaugh does, because for him it's you get one, you don't, you do, you don't. For me, it's not only, okay, we want to try to pursue this prospect, how are we going to put together things from a financial standpoint to make it an attractive option for the family so they can feel it's doable. And there's no cookie cutter way that goes down. If you want a very linear approach to recruiting, don't get into college coaching, because it's never going to happen that way. There's a lot of ebb and flow, and part of that ebb and flow is not only the timeline, the recruitment, there's also a financial piece that has to be worked through. And a lot of these people on this list, their families themselves individually have made some sacrifices to be at Grand Valley State, and I'm always appreciative of that.
I know there is an old adage in college coaching that says you recruit the player and the mother, or the parent in this case, or whatever it might be, but I know that you spend a lot of time on couches and family rooms talking about things that could pop up for a young student athlete coming to Grand Valley, and probably the one that's foremost in everybody's minds right now, the possibility of injuries. What's going to happen if a player gets injured? How will he be treated? What are the evaluation processes that you use? And that is an area that has grown tremendously over the last decade. Talk a little bit about the safeguards that are in place now for young people that are aspiring to become football players at the college level.
Yeah, well, I think I can't really speak on any other place, but I think at Grand Valley we have an unbelievable setup. Our head athletic trainer, Mark Stessner, and Jim Winkler work with our team on a daily basis. And that comes from not only an evaluation injuries, but putting up a treatment plan. I think we're very fortunate that We have great resources here in the greater Grand Rapids that we have several team physicians that work closely with our athletic training staff for treatments. Nobody wants to ever have a surgery, but if you have to have that happen, and also the rehabilitation. So I think that, with 550 student athletes, roughly that we have at Grand Valley State, we have to have a great plan in place, and it's a part of the game. There's always going to be injuries. And quite frankly, of all the sports we offer, the 20 varsity sports, there's going to be a higher rate in football just based on the fact that it's contact and what's going on. And that's not different here than any other place. But, of all of my competition, I think the people that we have in place, the resources, our proximity to Grand Rapids is a huge advantage for us, for that. And that we're going to get kids back out to participation in practice or games quickly, but also safely when they're ready to do that. And we've had protocols in plan, whether it's you roll an ankle to a concussion to anything else that happens. I think we have a great feel for how that's going to go down, and we're very fortunate. Again, me being here 12 years and the relationships that have been built with our athletic administration, I think aids in that we have very clear lines of communication here between our coaching staff, our athletic trainers, our ADs. Everybody understands how we're going to get the thing done. And it's unfortunate when injury occurs, but I think we have a system that we rely on to make sure that it's addressed properly, and we get them back as quick as we can.
Matt, fans across the country look at a day like today. They see the culmination of your effort as coaches, but there's so much going on behind the scenes for you guys. Lots of visits, lots of travel and the like. I'm curious to know maybe a favorite recruiting story you have. Maybe it's this year, maybe it's from past years. What comes to mind when you think about some of the travails you've had to go through?
Yeah, this year we played so late, December 12th, they had Christmas break. I mean, it was a scramble. I think last year, I remember Coach Morris and I, we took a kind of a 4-state trip to visit some committed prospects, and on the drive, we were down in Ohio on the way back home. I mean, we had some horrible weather, but at that point in time, it's like, I do not want to get another hotel room and stay in another hotel. And we just kind of hammered down, figure out a way to get to M6 and get on in. And it was less than ideal, and probably took some chances there. But, this year wasn't too bad. We've been pretty fortunate. We had good weather. Other than me forgetting my iPass and having to blow through a bunch of Illinois tolls in an effort to try to get to someplace quickly and not paying any tolls and having the blowback on that, it was pretty good this year. It's amazing, though, for us, the weather, huge impact on schedules and times, school cancellations, bad roads. We were really fortunate this year in the Midwest that didn't jam us up too bad.
I'd like to ask you a little bit, Mitch, a question for the benefit of maybe some young guys out there that were hoping for an offer from a school like Grand Valley or for somebody else that didn't get an offer, and to talk a little bit about some of the success stories that you know of guys who have come here lightly recruited or not recruited at all. We were all talking in the room before we got started today about the great middle linebacker Anthony Adams, who played in the middle of the last decade, just a huge part of it. A guy that wasn't any kind of a prospect, just showed up one day and asked if he could walk on, got the okay, became a great player. Have you had some experiences like that as well?
Well, sure. I've been saying this a little bit because people have been asking me how many true freshmen are going to play. Like, if you would have sat here 1 year ago today and said that Nick Dotson was going to have the impact on the 2015 team that he did, I probably wouldn't have assumed that based on his recruitment timeline and some other guys we had in that class. So, I think you get to the signing day and then you have to continue to reevaluate everything. And at some point in time, we talk a lot about you got to earn it around here. So we're telling our same team that thing right now. Like, the weight room is great, and we're trying to get guys bigger, faster, stronger, but we can't make football decisions in the weight room, spring practice, earn it, all those type of things. And, we've got some guys, currently on our team that I didn't know that they would have the impact that they did, and they are, and what they did from a positional standpoint, moving around and showing up, like Dante Carey this year moved from corner to safety. I'm not sure a year ago I thought that was going to happen. It happened, and Martavius Carter stepping in as a redshirt freshman and having 300 yards rushing against the defending national champs. A year ago, if you would have asked me that, I would say there's no way that's happening. So that's what's unique about this sport and this game. You never quite know what's going to happen. You just kind of take it. I appreciate Colin Slosher earlier in the segment was asked the question. Goals just take it day by day. You kind of got to take that a little bit with your talent that you have in the building too. Take it day by day, and constantly evaluate and don't until they get out there.
Well, we've got 12 more players to talk about. We're going to jump right in with that with Tim Morrison. We'll do that when we come back with more here on Xfinity and the Grand Valley Sports Network.
something every single day at Grand Valley State University. About who you are and who you can become. About where you've been and where you're going. About your goals and how to accomplish them. At the end of the day, you know what you want from life. Find it within yourself. Find it within Grand Valley State University.
Dudes, you know, been a couple of A-plus roommates. And I hate to do this because you guys have been cool with everything. You're cool with my band. You're cool with that English accent phase, remember that?
We're literally out of milk.
And that theater troupe.
Rain down up. Hey, could you give me a second, please?
But State Farm's helped me be really smart with my money, and I got my own pet now. Oh, no big deal, Mom, Dad. My new place doesn't allow pets. Dylan's gonna have to stay here. One love, Pops.
Start out right in life. With everything from renter's insurance to your first bank account, State Farm is there.
My fathead king! My fathead king! Oh my gosh! Yes! That's great! They give me funny, Daddy!
That looks really good. That look good?
This is my fat head.
I'm so excited for her. I have goosebumps.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome!
Do you like it?
I love it!
Well, we can get some guys together. We can have a game out there today. Field looks good. Stadium's ready. And Tim Morrison's a guy that's always ready for a football game or for some football talk. We're back here today in Allendale. Tom Cleary along with Steve Lloyd-Jones and Tim Morrison, offensive coordinator at Grand Valley. Some of these guys that we have in the next group were your guys that you recruited.
Certainly.
Is there any in-house competition that takes place to see who can outdo the other guy with recruits when you're looking to see who you can land?
Well, it certainly is. When you get a staff of 7 or 8 guys with the competitive levels that we have, it's always a fun competition. Kind of back and forth. You always have the team concept in mind. We're obviously doing the best we can, for Grand Valley State football, but it's a friendly competition, I would say, between the assistants.
Kind of like people in the jury room. You're arguing the merits of a case, and you're trying to make your argument. Well,
that's exactly right.
If you're going to get fish into the boat, you might as well start with some big fish. And
no
I
question.
know that as we take a look at this next group of 12, here's a pretty big guy right here, Keegan Golder, who's a local guy, and this is one of the guys from your recruiting area. Tell us about him.
Yeah, I tell you, Keegan really fits the model for what we're looking for at the offensive line position. When you look at a long, athletic, physical player, that can really do a lot of things for us, whether it's especially for us at the offensive tackle position, a lot of things that we ask those kids to do with their size, with their length, with their athletic ability, whether it's the pass setting, the backside of runs, things of that nature. And he really has done a good job, and we identified him really in the process of recruiting as a long kid that really has a lot of upside. When you look at his size right now, really has the frame to continue to grow and develop throughout our program. So we're really excited about him and the things he can do for us, no doubt.
You got a couple guys like that before we move on to our next player. And how worrisome is it for you when you see a really great prospect who you think is going to be perfect, and you're worried about him getting an offer from somewhere else?
Yeah, it's always the interesting side of the process. We identify if we're on the right type of guys, you're always going to have a little bit of worry of who may come in late on a kid for sure.
Well, as we look at the class overall, the skill positions in previous classes, you really address those hard: running back, quarterback, and that kind of thing. A running back here in this class, and a guy by the name of Dreon Kemp out of Battle Creek. And, running back, again, a position you have a lot of ability in right now.
Yes.
What does he bring to the program?
Yeah, I tell you, one of the things that Dreon really brings to the program is really the chance to be an explosive, great combination of explosion and physical, in our run game, is a very versatile player. One of the things we're always trying to find in our offensive backfield is, can a guy play in multiple positions for us? We ask our running backs to do a lot in our offense, whether it's pick up a linebacker on a blitz, run, an inside run, an outside run, or even you've seen we catch those balls a lot out in the flat and really get those guys in space. So it's a very versatile position for us. One of the things that we really like about him is he's an explosive player. We recognized him in a couple different camps last summer, early on in the process, as just a guy that can really flat out run and play fast, which is exciting for us in the type of offense we want to be. It's explosive, and we really feel that he fits the mold of what we're looking for at the running back position.
Well, when you talk about the versatility of a great running back, let's take a look at what happened to Grand Valley after Kirk Spencer went down last season at the end of the year. The next game, his leadership was certainly missed in that one, and that's why it's important to develop that versatility. Here's a guy that's going to line up on the other side of the ball at Grand Valley in all likelihood, Chaz Westfall. And he's a guy whose name was on the lips of Matt Mitchell when he came in this morning. He talked about this guy as being somebody from Ohio who looks like a prototypical Chris Spielman type almost.
Correct. Certainly a prospect that we're very excited about. Really when you watch him move, watch him play, he is a big, oversized linebacker that we really feel is a great fit at the defensive line position. With the model of find long, athletic players on the defensive side of the ball that are physical and really trying to move them closer to the ball. So you find a large, physical safety, maybe you can move those guys to a linebacker. Find a big physical linebacker like this, move them to the defensive line. So you constantly improve the athletic ability of your offense, of your defense when you move a guy like that who's been playing with his, standing up, and you start moving him down, just becomes more explosive defense, which is something we're always trying to do when you talk about stopping offenses in our league.
The defensive back spot, you grab 4 in the class, and guys know some of the most talented athletes you have. Mark Wilson, who we're going to see now, out of Detroit Renaissance, long, lanky guy, as most DBs are, 6 foot, 180, but a lot of athleticism too. Touch on him a little bit. Yeah, exactly. When you look at what we're trying to identify at the defensive back position, for our program and in our defense, again, you hear constantly with every coach, and starts with Coach Mitchell, obviously, the versatility of a player. A kid like Mark, is able to play safety, our nickel position, and really move around and do a lot of things for our, for the defense. And especially look at the defensive back position. That's a lot of times where we're pulling from the special teams pool. Because again, long athletic players that are physical, know how to tackle. So he's really provides a lot of that physicality where he can, line up on the edge and play corner, can get closer to the box and play our overhang position in the run game. So we ask a lot of those kids, and he certainly, fits the mold of what we're looking for at that position.
I know as an offensive coordinator, Tim, there's a lot of good skilled position players around. You can find them in a lot of different schools, a lot of different places. But the guys that you want in your posse are probably people on the offensive line. Another guy from Forest Hills coming up here, Evan McCauley, that is from Forest Hills Northern. Yep. And a little unusual to find 2 kids from schools just a couple of miles away who are going to come play for Grand Valley here next year. Yeah, it worked out great. Those 2 guys, Evan and Keegan, are actually going to room together. When you recruit kids from a similar area, they know each other, even before, they both decided to come to Grand Valley. So that's the fun part of the process. They've been, rivals, and now as they come together as teammates, it's been a fun process. And it's been fun for me working with those kids as they've transitioned, into that mold. I think Evan, the thing we like about him is, again, you talk versatility. This is a kid that's played offensive tackle, offensive guard, center, really has no limits in what he can do. For us, because of his height, he will be an inside kid for us. We like him, especially at the center position. He's played that position. He's a smart guy, can really handle our calls and things like that up front. So really brings a lot of intellectual play to the offensive line position, with all the different positions he's played. Really is going to give him some flexibility and plays with a great motor in terms of his pad level and getting after up front. So we like him as an inside prospect, because of those things that he does.
We've talked about some big wide receivers, that you have. Zach Smith, Mike Robb, 6'3", 6'6", good size, good athletic ability. But, for an offensive coordinator, you like to have different tools in that toolbox to use, and different size wideouts give you mismatch opportunities. And a guy next we're going to look at here, Kareem Muhammad, 5'9", 160, who can be a guy maybe in space who can really create issues too. Yeah, I tell you, Kareem is, when you talk about this class, you talk about explosive home run hitter, for your offense is something that he really brings to the table. That's really his, kind of his number one quality, that he brings for us. And we're constantly, you mentioned the mix of wide receivers. We're always trying to find different types of kids and not just a mold, of a Mike Robb who's a tall kid, or, Brandon Wadley who can possibly play both inside or outside, whereas, Kareem is more of an inside kid for us, but because of his speed and explosiveness, that's the type of kid that you'll see us a lot with fly motions and hand the ball to him, the screen game. Anything for a player with his explosive ability
to get the ball as fast as we can in space. Obviously, we implemented some of the bubble screen stuff last year. He's really a kid that really has a higher value in our offense with some of the things we're doing now. And we're certainly excited to add his home run ability, to the offensive side of the ball this year.
Well, he's somebody that Bart Williams will get to know pretty well. We're going to talk with Bart a little bit later on in the program, but we're going to talk in just a few minutes with Nick Postma about the last 6 recruits here on the list for Grand Valley today. Tim Morrison, thanks for being with us. Best of luck in the future.
Thanks, guys.
And we'll come back with more here on Xfinity and the Grand Valley Sports Network after this.
How's it going? Nice to meet you guys. I have these 2 laptops. We're gonna each download a TV show. I'm gonna download it on Xfinity, and you guys are gonna download it with AT&T Uverse, and we're gonna see who goes faster. Go.
Well, this is a no-brainer so far.
How's AT&T doing?
Struggling.
I'm ready to go. We'll wait for you guys.
Looks like we're gonna be waiting for a while.
Don't let Uverse slow you down. Upgrade to an Xfinity X1 Triple Play from Comcast and save when you bundle. See for yourself. Call 1-800-XFINITY or visit Comcast.com today.
Many of our customers are repeat customers. Once they travel with Cardinal, they come back time and time again.
Our drivers are the best in the industry. We have so many positive comments about our drivers.
Cardinal Bus, 85 years of safe, reliable, worry-free transportation. Call us at 800-348-7487.
At Metro Health, we don't see patients, we see people. And when it comes to their health care, there's one thing we're all working toward: helping them feel better. Better summers, better dances, better retirements, and better roads ahead. This is what we want for every person we see every day. Better. Metro Health. Better all around.
There's a scene, Lover Stadium. It'll look a little different come September when a lot of these young players will be out on the field for the first time. Many of them just wearing sweats. Maybe a few of them will get into pads for that first game of the year. You never know how it shakes out. We're joined right now by Nick Postma, the Grand Valley assistant coach, who's been very involved in the recruiting this season again. And the first guy we want to talk about, Nick, is Cordell Finley from Rolling Meadows, Illinois. He's listed as an athlete. That means the tug of war is on for people like you and your counterparts. Tell me a little bit from your standpoint how this guy best fits in to the Grand Valley picture.
Yeah, I hope when he comes here he drops every ball that is thrown to him, so he's put in my room right away. But no, he's a really good player. He's a good athlete. He can do a lot of things. You know, when you watch the highlight, you liked a lot of things he did as a receiver, but then when he came in on his workout, there was a lot of things he did, and he did them very, very well. You know, his change of direction, his length, his speed. There's a lot of things he can do if it's on offense or defense. We'll find a place for him, no doubt, because he's that good of a player. There's a lot of things he can do. With, like I said, his change of direction is really good, and his speed, you can't coach speed, and when he has that, when you have that, we'll find a place for him for sure, if it is corner or safety or receiver.
As we see some of those highlights of him there, another guy that you got to personally see and recruit up front from the offensive line, Jacob Phillips, 6'4", 275. From the West Bloomfield program there, Matt Judon, of course, coming here to the Lakers from there, and you got to see him personally.
Yeah, no, he's a really good player out of West Bloomfield. They have a lot of talent come out of there, as you mentioned, Matt Judon. He's a longer kid. He's very aggressive. He's a unique player. He actually played lacrosse in high school for a couple years, and then involved into play offensive line. He's such a big kid, all 6'5". And I think he's nasty. I think he'll get after people. I think he's athletic enough to be able to pass set as a tackle with speed rushers. And then I also think that he's aggressive enough to be able to tack downhill and have some good run blocks.
Nick, we're going to talk a little bit about the next guy up here from Belleville, Michigan, Ronathan Elmore. And Matt Mitchell said, without question, defensive line is the hardest place in Division II to find players. And it's even more important these days because of the spread passing game. Linemen are being forced to chase to the sideline. You can't get by with just 4. 8 would be ideal. 10 would be even better. You like this guy?
No, I do. We do, I should say. Coach Whitlow did a great job recruiting him. It was early in the process before we got on him and got him into camp and, got him on a visit. Great family, good person. He's what you call a true speed rusher on the end. And I'm going to be honest with you, it makes my job a lot easier in the back end when the D-line get to the quarterback as fast as they do. But like you said, I agree. If you have 6, 7, 8 guys that you can, rotate in and stay healthy and stay fresh, for that fourth quarter, getting after the quarterback is a key, I think.
One of the things as we look at the highlights of him, those great edge rushers obviously are important for the defense, but maybe just as importantly for the offense, those tackles and tight ends who can help seal an edge and keep those guys away. The next guy on the list is the tight end that we want to look at here, Mr. Dempster. As Grant Dempster, tight end at 6'3", 250 out of Lafayette, Indiana, and a player that, as we talked earlier with head coach Matt Mitchell, perhaps some big things in store for him.
Yeah, no, we like him. He is a true tight end. He is a really good run blocker. He's very physical. Coach Morrison fell in love with him early on the process, and we kept our foot on the gas pedal to recruit him for a while now, and we were fortunate enough to be able to get him in this recruiting class. And he is a true grader tight end, but he's also athletic enough to go out for a pass here and there just to keep the defense honest. But as far as the run game goes, I think he'll really help us in the run game, blocking those DNs.
Next guy up here for Grand Valley on National Letter of Intent Signing Day is a young guy from Midland, Michigan, Luke DeLong, a wide receiver. Now, this is not a position of great need for Grand Valley immediately. A lot of underclass players return next year. It figures to be a tough lineup spot to crack. And this guy is not a giant. He's 5'11", 175, kind of an in-betweener, which tells me there's got to be something special about him. Otherwise, why bother taking a guy like this?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head with a special player. He's a smart player, and he's a good football player. When you talk about good football player, that means he could do a lot of things. He could play inside receiver, he could play outside receiver. He'll pick up with the offense really quick because he's a very smart, understands the game type of a player, and you need that in your offense so you can do a lot of things to that regard. And I think he's going to push other kids to play right away because he is smart and he will pick up on the offense and he can do so much. There's multiple. There's not a position on the offense that he cannot play. And I think that he'll be able to play multiple positions and help us out in the future.
Nick, we got a couple of extra moments with you. I want to go back to Cordell Finley, the athlete you talked about, and you said you're hoping that he's dropping footballs. It reminds me of a few years ago with Blake Smolin. Chuck Martin used to tell the story that Blake Smolin used to whine perceptibly in practice when he was with the defense. And he said that, Chuck finally said, well, just go ahead. Go back over to the offensive side if you're going to be that way about it. And he turns out to be the all-time, all-purpose yardage leader at Grand Valley. Sometimes those things have a way of working themselves out.
No, they do. And, he stayed on the offense the whole time. And, another kid sticks out real quick is Eric Thompson, who we recruited on the offense side of the ball, was on the offense side of the ball for 2 years. And we needed a little bit of help at the safety position. He came over to our place in my room, and he played for 4 years and did a heck of a job. And he, no doubt, could have played on offense too. And you talk about those players, and it's a unique situation, and it's good for us that they could play offense, they could play defense. We'll find a home for them if it is on the offense side of the ball, or the defense side of the ball. If it's a running back, wide receiver, or a safety or corner. And I think that's good that we get a lot of kids in here that could play and can play multiple positions.
Well, and they need such a varied skill set, particularly in the back end too. Tom, you were talking about it up front, but with the spread attacks and running quarterbacks, you got to have guys in that back end of your defense that they don't just defend the pass. They've got to get up there on the run sometimes or play in space. That's hard to find guys who can do all of that.
No, it is, and I'm constantly trying to play with 12 players in the field, but they don't allow us to do that.
Right.
But with this group of receivers we have coming in, there's no doubt there's a couple of them that could play on the defense side of the ball because of what you just said. They're athletic, they can run, they're long, they can change direction, and you need that in the back end because of everything we do of teams that spread you out and make you defend the whole field, and also be able to guard receivers that are very, very talented.
Well, Nick, one of the great things about your job is that you help bring in players, and you really don't know what you've got until you unwrap these guys and get them here and see what they do. I guess a case in point for this Grand Valley football team last year was the quarterback Bart Williams, who took over. Before the year, nobody knew anything about him. He hadn't played any football at all. We thought, oh yeah, he's the tall, skinny guy with longish hair. Well, 40-plus touchdown passes later, people know who he is, and he's not going to be skinny forever. You guys are trying to beef him up over there in the weight room right now. Steve Lloyd-Jones is going to head over there and chat with Bart Williams, and we will be able to hear what he has to say when we come back with more on Xfinity and the Grand Valley Sports Network.
Correct, I have a life mate. Is that consequential?
With whom are you communicating?
Jake from Planet State Farm.
Jake from Planet State Farm at 0300 hours. State your identity.
It is Jake from Planet State Farm, home of Discount Double Check.
Describe your apparel, Jake from Planet State Farm.
Khakis.
Khakis. Explain.
A dull earthly garment covering male extremities.
Sounds most appropriate.
Save mass quantities, even at 0300 hours. Get to a better state.
You learn something every single day at Grand Valley State University about who you are and who you can become, about where you've been and where you're going, about your goals and how to accomplish them. At the end of the day, you know what you want from life. Find it within yourself. Find it within Grand Valley State University.
Refreshment calls, Coors Light answers.
Anybody else?
Frost brewed Coors Light, the world's most refreshing beer.
How's it going? Nice to meet you guys. I have these two laptops. We're gonna each download a TV show. I'm gonna download it on Xfinity, and you guys are gonna download it with AT&T UVerse, and we're gonna see who goes faster. Go.
Well, this is a no-brainer so far.
How's AT&T doing?
Struggling.
I'm ready to go. We'll wait for you guys.
Looks like we're gonna be waiting for a while.
Don't let UVerse slow you down. Upgrade to an Xfinity X1 Triple Play from Comcast and save when you bundle. See for yourself. Call 1-800-XFINITY or visit Comcast.com today.
Well, we're back at the football offices at Grand Valley State University. A lot of photos like that around of past great teams that we've had here in the last 15 years. I'm Tom Cleary with you today, along with Steve Lloyd-Jones, who we'll be getting back to in just a moment. Before we got into the planning stages, deep into the planning stages of this show, I had a chance to talk with Matt Mitchell, and I asked him about late recruiting season drama that had occurred. And he told me a story. He said, well, I'll tell you one. Bart Williams, he said, we were in on him. We thought we had him. And at the end, all of a sudden, an avalanche of interest, much of it from Division I universities. But we had developed a relationship with Bart. He stayed with us. And Coach Mitchell told me, he said, I got a lot of sleep that night after we finally landed Bart Williams. He sat really for a couple of years here at Grand Valley behind a couple of veteran quarterbacks. But when he got his chance this year, he really made it happen, leading Grand Valley to the national semifinals and just having a sensational, productive year. He's continuing to work on his game right now. He's in the weight room with Steve Lloyd-Jones. Let's enjoy hearing from those those two right here now.
Well, Bart, we can see and hear around us a lot of activity here in the weight room. Tell us about the off-season workouts. How often do you guys do this? What are the expectations? What's it like here?
Yeah, well, we work out in the weight room Monday, Wednesday, Friday. The coaches are here watching us and trying to get up as much weight as we can, really, and but at the same time being safe, because we have a big emphasis on not being weightlifters. We're trying to be football players. So, some lifts we do might be a little different than how maybe technically you should do it, but they're to make you a better football player, not necessarily a better lifter. So we stress a lot on technique and not necessarily, maybe you can squat 385 pounds, but you can't do it very well. So, maybe go down a little bit and make sure you get in depth. And then Tuesdays and Thursdays, we're running in the indoor, getting better, changing direction, stuff like that, being better athletes, working on speed development, and a lot of team building too, because there's a lot of times when you need someone to pick you up, and you don't have anybody else but the guy right next to you, because the coach is there, the ones facilitating everything. So, but we got a good group of guys that they're really like attacking it and not just doing it because they have to.
Now, for you as a quarterback, how is your workout going to differ from a lineman or a guy in the secondary? Explain that for us.
Yeah, and Coach Ginn actually implemented this just the last couple years. My freshman year when I was here, we were doing all the same workouts as everybody else, but quarterbacks, we got a lot more core stuff we have to do. Not as much weight over our heads, so we're not stressing our shoulders too much. We do a lot of stuff. We'll hook up a band and work on our drops, while other guys are doing a lot of incline, bench, and different types of deadlifts that we're not doing. So, it's definitely different workouts and more specific to quarterbacks. And like I said, we focus a lot on technique too, not necessarily putting up a ton of weight.
Do you lift weights during the season? And if so, what is that like? What are you trying to accomplish?
Yeah, we lift during the season. A lot of that's just to maintain what you do in this time and in the summer. So during the season, you're not trying to work towards a personal record or anything, but you got to lift so you're in shape and mostly injury prevention kind of things. But we lift weights, like I said, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and I know a lot of, like, me and my roommates will go out on Saturdays and do a couple other lifts too. Just keep the body right.
Well, for you, what a great season you had your first year as a Laker. Take us back to that. You had not proved anything at that point. You're a new guy coming onto the field. You got to earn the trust of your teammates. That's not easy to do, and it's not a given. Walk us through those moments when you had to do that. The beginning of the season was very difficult by way of opponents. How did that process play out?
Well, at the beginning of the season, like you said, I hadn't proved anything, and I kind of feel like I spent basically the whole first half of the season, it seemed like I was going out there, trying to prove to my teamemates, that I was worthy to be out there. And, it just so happened, you look back and, threw a couple probably more touchdowns than I thought, and seemed like I was on pace to have a pretty good season. And, the last half of the season, I really felt like I took charge personally. And I was seeing the field a lot better than I was at the beginning. That's the main thing, and just feeling comfortable out there. So I could kind of work on, maybe like really getting better from week to week and focusing more on my personal skills than just, playing for my teammates and like trying to survive out there. I was out there actually trying to make some plays, and that was one of the most fun seasons I've ever had. And unfortunately, we came up a little bit short, but.
We hear from quarterbacks the game slows down after a while. Did you feel that? Did you sense it?
Yeah, most definitely. It's funny because after the first Southwest Baptist game, I remember just sitting there doing the interviews after the game, and they're asking me questions, and my mind was just racing. I was so just emotionally jacked up, and I couldn't hardly remember any of the game. And towards the end of the season, I remember we get into film, and I just remember every single play, and just little stuff like that just shows how much more comfortable I was. And it was definitely a gradual thing throughout the season.
Well, a lot of skill guys back, particularly at the wide receiver core, and that timing, that relationship of how you and your receivers are reading things so critical. That's got to be a comforting feeling, I'm sure, right? When coming back into a year where you have all these guys there who know what they're doing.
Yeah, and that's something you got to keep in mind too, especially right now in the spring, because there's no Matt Williams, no Brandon Bean, so and not Potts is obviously graduated, but in the spring, we got a lot of young guys coming up, and so we're trying to develop that right now in the spring. And we haven't started spring ball yet, but once we do, start throwing balls to the younger guys that I haven't got a chance to throw the ball to yet. And sometimes some growing pains, and it's tough to like have a spring practice where things didn't necessarily go how you wanted, but you just got to look back and realize, okay, like these guys are working through some things. I'm working through some things to like get on the same track of these guys, but it's definitely not an underrated thing. Like you definitely have to go and have connections with your wideouts.
Year one for you, a lot of great things that you can look at, but what's the takeaway? What do you take from last year to help you get better for this year? Is there one thing?
One main thing, especially right now, is doing the weight room stuff, because I had a couple injuries, and I don't feel like I was in as good a shape as I could have been going into the season. So right now I'm trying to get in really good shape, and I feel like I could have made some more plays and helped the team out a lot better if I was in better shape going into the season. So that's one thing that I feel like I can work on. And then I'd say, apart from the physical side, is just being comfortable out there for the whole season and really growing my teammates with me. So that's one thing I'm gonna try to work on too.
Well, great catching up with you, and don't let the defensive lineman tease you on the weights.
yeah, I won't. Thank you.
That's quarterback Bart Williams. Let's go back to Tom now in the studio.
All right, thank you, Stephen. Let's clarify something for Grand Valley fans. You heard Bart Williams say there's going to be no Matt Williams and no Brandon Bean. What he's referring to, of course, is the fact that during the springtime, Matt Williams is a mainstay on the baseball team. Brandon Bean is part of the squad that runs for Jerry Baltus in track and field. They will be back to catch his passes in the fall. Well, we've talked from the inside view of Grand Valley football here today, what the recruiting picture looks like. A little bit earlier, Steve Lloyd-Jones had a chance to talk with a recruiting expert, Alan True, and those two had quite a discussion about the way Grand Valley's players and incoming recruits are viewed in the Midwest. We'll find out what they had to say in that conversation when we come back with more on Xfinity and the Grand Valley Sports Network.
At Metro Health, we don't see patients, we see people. And when it comes to their health care, there's one thing we're all working toward: helping them feel better. Better summers, better dances, better retirements, and better roads ahead. This is what we want for every person we see every day. Better. Metro Health. Better all around.
Replace the microwave cooking device.
Oh, this will cost mass quantities.
Commence the jingle.
Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Hey, Bildar, how can I help?
Brent Allen, did we receive savings from our discount double check?
Oh, yeah, a bunch.
This pleases me.
Wait, we're in space. I thought you guys were from France.
Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there in France. See? France.
Wait.
Save mass quantities with a State Farm discount double check.
And lastly, Uverse gives you a whole bunch of on-demand TV shows and movies. Let's get started.
Well, how many is a whole bunch? As many as Xfinity?
I swear you're gonna love it.
That didn't really answer my question.
Over 5,000 on demand.
Well, Xfinity On Demand gives us over 30,000.
We'll set it up for you.
Don't settle for Uverse. Get over 5 times more on-demand TV shows and movies on TV with Xfinity from Comcast.
They are getting busy, those guys over there. That's you and me in about a half hour, right, Steve?
That's right. We're at there next.
Jump into the gear and then have at it. Those guys know how to make it happen. Well, certainly here in Allendale and at Grand Valley, a lot of people feeling very good about the 24 or so recruits and new players that are coming into Grand Valley for the 2016 season. But sometimes the view could be a little bit different from the outside. There are so many recruiting experts out there right now that make a living from charting the progress of high school players all throughout the Midwest to see what kind of prospects they are and where they'll end up. And you had a chance to talk with one of them, Steve, Alan True, who knows a lot about these guys. Their names come into view for him almost on a daily basis. And you had a chance to speak with him a little bit earlier. Tell us a little bit about some of the things that he was looking at.
Yeah, I talked with Scout.com's Alan True, and he was saying how very impressed with his class and how you have a great mix of players, not necessarily the skilled players, but guys that are up front in the trenches, the defensive secondary, and then the wide receivers. He loves the mixture of athleticism and big playability that Grand Valley has here. But as we began the interview, I was talking with him about how the Lakers have been able to grab, 14 kids out of the state of Michigan, but then 10 out of the 3 Midwestern states around there. So regionally, this Laker footprint, the strength of Grand Valley's brand seems to be very strong.
It really is. I mean, I think if you go back and look traditionally at Grand Valley classes, GLIAC classes, D2 classes, a lot of the time they're built simply within state recruits. And Grand Valley certainly hasn't forgotten about their home state, but at the same time, they've been able to go out and get outstanding players from Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, even dipping down into Kentucky the last couple of years. So I think as more kids have been able to get to campus and see the facilities, experience game day at Lover Stadium, it's really spread the word on what Grand Valley has to offer the football program outside of just the state of Michigan.
In previous classes, the Lakers have done a great job loading up on linebackers, quarterbacks, running backs, and the like. But we see this year that they've met some needs positionally there at the secondary, 4 defensive backs, 4 defensive linemen, 5 wideouts, and 7 offensive linemen. And, Alan, we all know you always want to get those offensive and defensive linemen whenever you can, don't you?
Absolutely. I think big kids who are athletic and can play at a high level are very hard to find. So if you've got them, and they're ready to commit to your program, you got to take them when you can. I think when you have injuries at those positions, it's important to have depth because a couple injuries here and there up front can really ruin a season. So I think in addition to that, the way Grand Valley plays their defense, which is very aggressive, you'd like to be able to have multiple defensive linemen who can play and get into a rotation to keep those guys fresh. And I think you're seeing that with this class, with the adding of big bodies and big athletes.
All right, Alan, let's talk about some key members of this class. Let's start in the secondary first. And Brandon Wadley, a defensive back, tell us about him.
Well, he's a kid who he went to the AWP RAS camp in Fort Wayne last year. You noticed him right away. He was the defensive back MVP at that camp. And at the time, everybody thought for sure he was going to be a D1 guy, a MAC guy. That didn't end up happening. I think he's a steal for Grand Valley, a kid who's versatile, played both sides of the ball in high school, but I think will end up as a defensive back and a really good one for Grand Valley because he has size and athleticism.
Couple of wide receivers now, big guys here, a guy with some Big Ten talent, Zach Smith. What an addition he is.
Yeah, he's a kid who maybe fell under the radar a little bit because of injuries, but he's an outstanding athlete, a basketball player at 6'3" to almost 6'4", and really go up and get the football. I think that's going to be an asset in Grand Valley's offense. They like to throw the football down the field and be aggressive there. They like to give their wide receivers a chance to go up and make plays high in the air. This is a kid who can do that. I think he's going to create some tremendous matchup problems for defenses in the GLIAC.
Yeah, speaking of mismatches, 6'6" wideout Mike Robb is part of this class. Talk about him for a little bit.
Yeah, another kid who early on in the process had a lot of Division I interest, actually had some MAC offers, had an offer from Miami, Ohio, which has obvious Grand Valley ties there. Rob is a kid who can go up and get the football, another basketball player, so you have an athletic kid at 6'6". With his frame, he could fill in and be a lot of things. There's no guarantee that he won't maybe be a tight end down the line, but I think as it stands, a guy you can go to in the red zone, a guy you can throw fades to, and a kid who has a lot of athletic ability and a big frame.
Scout.com's Alan True with us today here on National Signing Day. And, well, Laker fans certainly remember Dan Skuta, Alan, and the great career that he had, not only for Grand Valley, but, of course, part of the NFL right now. And a guy who's going to fill the role as a defensive lineman here for the Lakers, former linebacker, Chaz Westfall. Tell us about him, a guy who had some MAC offers.
Yeah, I think Skuta is a great lead-in for him because Chaz was a linebacker in high school, a middle linebacker, and an offensive lineman who's going to transition to the defensive line. 6'4", 252 pounds, and athletic enough to play linebacker at the high school level. So I think you can see how that would translate to defensive end in college. He's a kid who won numerous Player of the Year awards down there this year, and Ohio is a state with great high school football. So that is no small accomplishment. A kid who, like you said, had some MAC interest and D1 interest and ends up at Grand Valley. Another kid from out of state as well. We talked about expanding the recruiting base, and he's a kid who comes in from Ohio with a lot of accolades behind him.
Well, Alan, as you know, coaches love versatile, talented players. And a guy who fits into that mold, Jace Deminoff, just a football player, one of the best compliments you can give a guy, isn't it?
Absolutely. Pure football player and a throwback kind of kid. Very physical, has played on both sides of the ball, but I think he's going to be a linebacker at the next level. The thing you like about him, he comes from a very successful program at Ithaca. The kid is used to winning. He's used to playing on the big stage. He's been to Ford Field every year that he's played varsity football. One of the leaders on that team, and not only a leader, but the heart and soul of a very strong Ithaca defensive unit. So a kid who comes in with a lot of pedigree behind him and brings some physical nature to the football game.
Well, back to the secondary now, and a player we want to talk about, an athletic DB, Mark Wilson. Talk about him.
He was a kid who, again, had some MAC offers. Kent State had offered him, Akron had offered him, had a lot of other schools looking his way. A kid who played on both sides of the ball as a wide receiver and a defensive back, but I think will be a defensive back in college. Was one of the first commits in this class, so it was great for Grand Valley to get in on him early. Comes from the same school as Devin McKissick, who had a really nice year for the Lakers this year, and I think Mark can have a similar kind of impact that Devin has had in the secondary.
Well, also in that secondary, a local product, Tyler Bradfield from Rockford. Tell us about him.
Yeah, a lot of the same things we just said about Deminoff, I think, apply to Bradfield. Just a pure football player, a kid who played wide receiver, safety, and then played quarterback in the playoffs when their quarterback went down. No doubt just a tough, heady football player who basically did whatever his team needed him to do, and I think that's a running theme throughout this class. Another kid who comes from a great high school football program, is used to being coached hard by a coach like Ralph Munger. So I think you like kids who come from that kind of background.
Absolutely. And another local product, a lineman up front, Keegan Golder, Alan.
He's been a big part of Forest Hills Eastern building their football program. They've made one of the biggest turnarounds of any high school in West Michigan, and Keegan was a huge part of that. 6'4", 290 pounds. Had some schools come in on him late. Central Michigan, I know, was snooping around him late in the process. Grand Valley's able to keep a guy at home. We talked a little bit about how hard it is to find big guys who can move. Here's a big guy who can move, but also plays with some of the physical nature and some of the intensity you like to see out of an offensive line. I think he's going to end up being a really good player in Allendale.
Well, I had mentioned it earlier how in previous classes, Grand Valley had been able to load up on linebackers and skill position players, quarterbacks and running backs. Just one quarterback in this class, but an athletic guy, Frank D'Ascenzo. Talk about him for Laker fans.
Yeah, again, another kid who just did whatever his team needed, from playing quarterback to defensive back. A kid who can run with the football a little bit, but also showed this year as a senior. I think he really stepped forward and showed he could throw the football as well. He was looked at as kind of an athlete at this point last year. I think he's transitioned into being more of a quarterback. Will have every opportunity to show he's a quarterback at Grand Valley. But if for some reason that doesn't work out or he's needed elsewhere, he's a kid who's tough enough, physical enough to play safety, possibly play some other positions. So I think as an overall theme to this class, you have a bunch of kids who come from great high school football programs who are very versatile and will give Grand Valley and Matt Mitchell a lot of options as to where to play them.
Scout.com's Alan True with us here on National Signing Day. Alan, always busy for you. Thanks for joining us today.
All right. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Alan, for that update. Alan True from Scouts.com giving us the lowdown, the view from the outside of some of these players coming in to the Laker program in 2016. Well, we still have some time left in our program. We're going to hear next from a guy that if you attended a Grand Valley practice, you might hear before you'd see him. It's the fiery line coach, E.J. Whitlow, and we'll have him with Steve Lloyd-Jones in the Laker locker room right after we come back with more on Xfinity and the Grand Valley Sports Network.
You learn something every single day at Grand Valley State University about who you are and who you can become, about where you've been and where you're going, about your goals and how to accomplish them. At the end of the day, you know what you want from life. Find it within yourself. Find it within Grand Valley State University.
Well, one guy that we haven't had a chance to talk with yet is standing by with Steve Lloyd-Jones in the Laker locker room. He has been a great addition to the coaching staff here in Allendale, and his guys got it done in the postseason for sure. E.J. Whitlow right now with Steve Lloyd-Jones.
Here with E.J. Whitlow. And E.J., you look at that defensive line, a lot of talent for you up front. You don't have Matt Judon, one guy who was really leading the charge last year, especially applying pressure to the quarterback. So you don't replace him with just one player, but how do you try to get that production again?
Well, definitely replacing Matt is going to be a big challenge, but it's definitely one of those things where it's by committee. You know, we have a lot of talented guys up front. We hang our hat on everybody doing their job and, you know, getting out there and being able to make plays. So it's going to be a collection of guys like DJ Hogan, Alton Voss. You had Dylan Carroll that came on late in the playoffs, a guy like Keon Belcher, and then also a new guy that's joining our room is a guy by the name of Brian Moran, played tight end for us this past fall. He's making the transition over to defensive line this spring.
What are you seeing here in the offseason? Are the guys making some moves here, starting to improve?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Guys are hungry. You know, we're definitely not satisfied with the way that the season finished off. And so guys have that approach. You know, they're definitely humble and hungry. You know, our guys are attacking the offseason lifting. We definitely are doing some things from a winter conditioning standpoint to increase on mental and physical toughness, especially in the trenches. And our guys are buying into that message.
Are there some names, and the ones you rattled off, of course, played a lot last year, but there are some other guys that maybe who were in practice sessions and didn't see the field that you've got your eye on as some real contributors?
Well, there's definitely a couple young guys, and like I say, obviously an older guy that I didn't mention was Mark Rosenquist, who was a guy who definitely progressed throughout the season, started off early and then really started to play his best football towards the end. But some of the young guys that were down on scout team last year who I'm definitely looking forward to having a good spring are James McBride, a defensive tackle for us, a guy by the name of Aaron Cooper, he's going to be a defensive end for us. Those guys are definitely this off season and this winter conditioning and heading into spring ball, definitely looking forward to seeing some of the growth from those guys.
Key to that defense. Good play up front from these guys. Thanks, EJ.
Oh, thank you. Definitely glad to be here.
All right. Let's go back to Tom.
Okay, thanks, Steve, and thanks, EJ. Well, what a role he played for Grand Valley in the postseason when that defensive line really got after it. One more segment still to come here from Grand Valley. We'll hear one more time from head coach Matt Mitchell when we return on Xfinity and the Grand Valley Sports Network.
At Metro Health, we don't see patients, we see people. And when it comes to their health care, there's one thing we're all working toward: helping them feel better. Better summers, better dances, better retirements, and better roads ahead. This is what we want for every person we see every day. Better. Metro Health. Better all around.
There he is, David Kirkus, along with Brian Kelly, back celebrating the first national championship, and it goes back to 2002. Tom Cleary, along with Steve Lloyd-Jones, joined again by head coach Matt Mitchell, who seems a little bit more relaxed than he did at the beginning of the show. It's the end of a long journey for you and your guys who put in a lot of time on the road, on the phone, doing various different things. And I know that people get into football to play, they get into coaching to coach, but I don't know of any coach who ever said, I want to be a recruiter and do things like that. It's a different part of the job that probably takes a lot of time to grow into.
Yeah, recruiting is the lifeblood of your program. If you don't like to recruit, you shouldn't be in coaching. You know, it's a talent-based business, obviously, and getting the right guys is really critical. So I enjoy it. I enjoy getting to know the recruits, the families. I enjoy the process, you know, to get to know them. And like I said, this is a chance to breathe a little bit of sigh of release. You know, for us, playing until December 12th on a national semifinal on ESPN, and then right into recruiting, very little Christmas break, and then you just go for the next time to get to this. It's good that we've got these things officially signed and we can start to focus on the 2016 season.
This seems to be a year that for you and your staff, Matt, it went pretty much by the way you planned it. No real surprises, and things that developed early you were able to bring to fruition.
Yeah, for the most part, I think there was a little bit of activity late. We got a couple late commitments that were, really big late commitments, but they had a lot of things going on. And so, but we also had a lot of guys that we were in early on that we had developed a really great relationship. And as soon as our season was complete, it was a pretty much go, and we got those verbal commitments. So that was really key. So a lot of different timelines, but a majority of these guys, I think they were all in on Grand Valley really early in the process, and we, appreciate their commitment level, not wandering, doing anything else, and sticking with Grand Valley for a good part of the month of January.
Let's shift and look ahead a little bit to the 2016 season with these recruits, maybe most of which will go in and develop their talents. But with the team that you're going to have, a lot of home games up front, 3 to begin the year, and some names by way of the transfer route and others who have developed who are going to step in and play a key role. Talk about some of those new names.
Yeah, we're obviously got some returning starters, but we're not complacent. We're going to keep trying to get better. That's the players currently in our program. And obviously some guys coming in, I think the addition of a few transfers will help us out. First of all, Pete Sender from Air Force Academy playing tight end is really doing a great job for us right now. I think will help with that position. We got Josh Bass, was a mid-year transfer from Western Michigan University. And he's currently with our team, doing an unbelievable job. And we had 3 other guys. Avery Eccles was a local kid from Zeeland who went out to Liberty, came back. He's a kicker, tough competition with Joel Skipper, but we'll see how that unfolds. And then Jordan Van Dort was at Western Michigan, then Hope transferred in. We'll see how that unfolds. And, Zach Walker, another kid, little kid that went to Robert Morrison on the bounce back. So we've added a little bit of talent here mid-semester from some transfer schools. And we'll continue to try to do that to try to make our rosters a competitive roster heading in 2016.
Mitch, again to the schedule. I know you have no control over that, but your thoughts on 3 games up front at home and at the back end, you're going to be on the road. What is that like for you?
I like it. I mean, when you talk about electric atmospheres, it's Lubber Stadium. Once again, we led the nation in attendance. We have an unbelievable home game advantage. And to start out with 3 home games, boom, 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 when the weather's nice and the fans can enjoy the atmosphere and the product on the field, I think that's awesome. So we open up on a Thursday night game with Tiffin, the first week of classes. That's always been a really well-attended game, those that we've done that before, especially from the student standpoint. Tiffin's a good team. They've got some people back. And then 2 more Saturday night tilts, at Lubber Stadium against, obviously, got to play Lake Erie and also Northern Michigan. And first time we've had Northern Michigan on the schedule for a couple years just based on the nuances of the schedule. So, it's a little bit not your traditional home away, and a little bit more on the road. But you know what? We'll take them as they come. We enjoy it. And like I said, I'm excited to have our first 3 games at home, and like I said, with great weather. And we've always drawn extremely well at Grand Valley, and I think this is another opportunity with all these guys coming back, our semifinal appearance, a lot of excitement at Grand Valley State to come out and set another big number, for our record attendance. So if you're watching this and you haven't gotten your season tickets, I would. I think there's going to be a great product on the field, and I think we're going to have some great teams coming in.
Matt, so often in college football, players are required to sit out. They redshirt their first year. And then for so many of the very top players, they make a huge impact in their redshirt freshman year. Let's talk a little bit, just throw some names out there of people who haven't yet hit the stage for Grand Valley, but have a chance not just to play, but really be major contributors for you from your recruiting class of 2 years ago.
Yeah, I think first comes to my head, we have a tremendous amount of depth at linebacker. You talk to Colin Slosher and Joe Moran and David Talley, like all those guys coming back. We have 2 freshmen there. I'm excited about it. Isaiah Nkansa from Ohio, another out-of-state recruit down around Cincinnati area, and then Mike Pettis is down from the Battle Creek area. And those guys, I think, are going to be contributing. How much, we'll see, kind of how that unfolds. We've got some other guys up front. Coach Whitlow just came off a segment talking a little bit about James McBride inside, working really hard, and Aaron Cooper and those type of guys. Then we're going to have some guys step up on our offensive line and play, and I do think we have the pieces of the puzzle to do that. Nate Brady was a kid from Tecumseh, recruits a tight end, has really grown into an interior guy, that has a chance to really step in, hopefully, and make a contribution. There's a few other guys up front that have the potential to do that. So you never know. We got to roll out the balls here at some point, with our 15 spring practices, and they got to compete and they got to fight for those spots. But when you talk about all those returning starters and then a year ago today signing a big freshman class with some talent coming in, there's going to be a lot of competition in spring practice. And so I wouldn't assume anything based on the 2015 season. Everybody's going to have to earn their spot again heading into 16.
What happens between now and the spring game? Talk
well,
about
I say with the players, it's a lot of, lifting and running and building physical attributes, but developing mental toughness and some team chemistry. That's a really critical part for this to occur with a new group of guys. As coaches, we're going to spend a ton of time. We got to hire a new guy. Unfortunately, we lost Matt Yochis, one of our running back coaches down in Miami, Ohio. So we've got to hire a new assistant coach. I'll shift into more there. And then our rest of our staff, including myself, we're going to be spending a ton of time watching our cut-ups from the previous season. What did we do that was great that we need to, keep in the package and enhance upon? And then what weren't we very good at? What do we need to get better at offensively, defensively, and special teams? So that'll be our focus right now.
All right, well, it's been a momentous day here, Matt, at Grand Valley. A lot of new guys giving you great hope for the future, and certainly it's already whetted our appetite for the 2016 season, and we're looking forward to seeing you guys out there real soon.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. This is awesome, a 2-hour live broadcast. Not a lot of people doing this. Everybody in our athletic department, obviously you 2 guys, but Doug Lipinski, Tim Knott, and a lot of the setup. I mean, this is very unique at our level to have something like this, and I thought it was great, especially being a live broadcast like this. It was excellent for us as coaches talk about these guys, and hopefully these guys appreciate the attention they get, and that's something that's different about Grand Valley State is things like this.
Well, football season is not that far away here in Allendale. It will be coming upon us very, very very quickly. We've enjoyed talking to you about football here today and hope to see you sometime this fall when Grand Valley gets back in action. For Steve Lloyd-Jones and the rest of our broadcast crew, I'm Tom Cleary. Thanks for being with us today for our National Letter of Intent signing special on Xfinity and the Grand Valley Sports Network.
I'm almost done.
Now you can pay your bill, manage your appointments, and check your connection status. Anytime, anywhere.
Oh, so you're protesting?